Welcome to This Must Be the Place, the only Twin Cities real estate podcast where the talk won't be so boring that you.
Wow.
Well, in today's episode, we're going to talk about recent changes in the real estate laws that took effect August 17th, what that means for buyer representation, what that means for agency relationships, and buyer broker compensation, aka who pays for that compensation. We're going to speak to a very special guest, Nikki Warner, who is the director of communications for the Good Acre in St. Paul, president of the Hennepin and Ramsey County chapter of Minnesota Farmers Union, among other things. We're going to unveil a new segment called Neighborhood Watch, where we focus on one of many great Twin Cities neighborhoods, what makes it great, things to do, a little bit about the market in that area. We're going to do a little boom times where we discuss the Lynx, some books, a little bit more. And then we're going to spend the last 30 minutes dancing awkwardly to music while we don't take any questions from the audience.
That's exactly right,
All
Casey.
right, let's get it.
Hello and welcome to This Must Be the Place.
Yes.
I'm Andrew Shields,
Casey Golden.
the only Twin Cities podcast, real estate podcast, where one of the two hosts thinks an escalation clause is the mall Santa in the third floor rotunda at the Mall of America. Get it, Casey? Escalation clause.
I get it.
It's not
Isn't
bad.
that, wouldn't that mean that he's riding the escalator?
You're riding the escalator to meet Santa. Escalation clause.
Oh, I gotcha.
It's a thinker. All right. Welcome. Today, our first topic, we are going to talk about... I can't remember how to word it. You word it so eloquently.
Yes, we're going to talk about the changes in the law regarding the lawsuit that happened for the National Association of Realtors that took effect on August 17th. We're going to talk about buyer representation agreements and what that means for that. A little bit about what agency means for
Old car.
buyers, right? Old car, exactly. Thanks, Rolf Kritika. I'm going to tag in this one.
Yep.
And then we're going to talk about buyer broker compensation, aka who pays for it, right?
Correct. So what I get, and I'm sure you do too, a lot of questions from neighbors, friends, potential clients, anybody, is, man, what's going on with that lawsuit? I get that question all the time. So there's a lot of misinformation out there about what it's about. So yeah, we're just going to briefly talk about that and kind of answer that question, I think, right?
Yeah.
So the question I get most is, so sellers don't have to pay buyer broker compensation anymore, which essentially means
Which is true.
sellers don't need to pay the buyer's agent
Which,
anymore.
as a side note, has always been the case.
Has always been the case.
Nothing has changed.
Right. I believe the lawsuit stated, I believe it came out of Missouri, it stated that X percent or X number of realtors were calling that a fee and not a negotiation.
And the lawsuit was realistically more, as I understand it, centered around how the MLS, which is the multiple listing service, which is what most realtors or realtor associations belong to, one of many MLSs, which helps market and put your property out there. So it was really about the marketing of that fee to other agents.
Right.
Not necessarily how the mechanics of what that fee is or where it gets paid.
Right. You're right. The mechanics are the same they've ever been. It was always a negotiation.
Yeah.
It was always, the fee structure was always negotiable. It was never set, and it remains that way. So the difference is now, whereas before August 17th, on the MLS, let's say you're selling your house, you put it on the market with an agent, you market it on the MLS, it used to say a percentage for buyer's broker compensation.
Yeah. Yep.
Traditionally, that was anywhere between 2 and 3%.
But always negotiable.
Always negotiable, but that's typically, most of the time, that's almost always what you saw.
Yep.
Now you cannot advertise that.
Yep.
That's the difference.
Yep.
And you can still advertise it. You just can't advertise it on the MLS.
On the MLS, yeah. And what it does is I do think it makes I think it makes sellers more aware of what their options may be, right? And so as a listing agent, and I know you feel the same way because we've had discussions about this. As a listing agent, I don't want to say 100% of the time because there are extenuating circumstances, right? But like a majority of the time, I would recommend that my client pays a buyer broker compensation, pays for the buyer to have representation.
100%.
And there are a couple reasons to do that. One, it's going to bring more eyeballs to your property, right? As realtors come and say, okay, these guys are going to pay for my representing my buyer. We're not going to have to worry about how I earn my living, right?
Mm-hmm.
That might turn away some people who don't want to pay that fee. Some sellers some buyers who walk in and say, well, I can't afford to pay you. So I don't want to see any houses where the sellers aren't going to pay because I can't afford it. Right?
Correct.
So you're widening your base for which people are going to view that property. And then the second reason would be and you're the one that sort of worded this to me and you can take over, is like, realistically, the buyers bring the money to the table anyway,
Mm-hmm.
right? The buyers are getting the mortgage. They're coming with the cash offer. They are paying anyway, right? And so if you, at least as I view it, if you don't include that in your price, you might have a buyer who now has to maybe bid over to
Cover the cost. Sure.
And maybe you run into issues with appraisal or
Correct.
some other thing, right?
Correct.
So it just takes moving parts out of the way. And as a buyer, I think it's great because it's paid for, right? You don't have to worry about it coming out of your pocket, closing costs.
Right.
Like
especially when in this market, around 30% of home buyers are first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
So that is 30% have never bought a home, so
Yep.
they're not using equity from the sale of a home
Yep.
towards a down payment. So they have to come up with a down payment, whether it's 3%, 5%, 10%, 20%, whatever they want to do.
Out of pocket.
Out of pocket.
Yep.
They have to pay their own closing costs.
Yep.
They don't have to. That's a negotiation too,
Yep.
but their own closing costs, which are going to be roughly 3% of
Yep.
the purchase price of the home.
Yep.
They have to pay for an inspection.
Yep.
First-time home buyers don't have, almost by rule, don't have a lot of cash.
Whether they want to see a property or not that has that included. If
Right.
it doesn't have it included, sometimes they are just not physically, economically capable of making that work in terms of bringing cash to close on that property.
Right. And the other 70% of home buyers who aren't first-time home buyers, way more often than not, as a seller, you're not only selling a home, you're also buying another home.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
on the flip side of the transaction.
On the flip side of the transaction, right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, you don't want to call it a shell game because that sounds like a scam. It's not a scam at all, but you're just kind of moving money around anyway. Good agents like Casey and myself, of course, we work really, really hard, and we deserve compensation for sure. We're not out here sitting on gold toilets or anything. You're
not.
I guess I haven't been to your house in a while.
Bidets everywhere.
So, agents work really, really hard. Sometimes Casey can speak to this too, but there's some clients we've had where we show well over 100 houses to before they decide on buying a home over years of time.
Or door knocking neighborhoods where they might want to.
Yeah.
I mean, just lots of things beyond the show up to your first house, say, hey, this is great. Let's fill out some paperwork.
Correct.
Which is maybe some misinformation about how buyer's agents operate.
Yeah, exactly right. So I guess, as Casey laid out initially, the compensation nothing has really changed. It was always a negotiation. I think
It's just more upfront now.
it's
You talk about
yeah,
it.
you can talk. That's right. That's exactly right. You talk about it with your seller and you say, hey, what traditionally a percentage that it's going to cost you to pay both of your agents to
Yep.
sell a house. We like to start at whatever that number is, 6%, whatever. That's for both sides. It was a negotiation before. It's still a negotiation. This is
Yep.
why. This is the value that you're going to get out of that 6%.
And it's important, like to segue into this. It's important, as I've seen at open houses, right? And I've spoken to a lot of people that come in and they say, well, I've just been working with seller's agents at this point, right? And as I'm listing a house, Andrew Shields walks in, says, hey, this is a great house. I want to make an offer. Can you help me? As a seller's agent, I owe my seller certain responsibilities.
Correct.
You're a customer. You're not a
Correct.
client at this point. I owe you honesty. I owe you accounting. Like, I owe you fair dealing.
Loyalty?
Right? I don't owe you loyalty.
Oh, as a customer, right.
As a customer, right?
Right.
So
No.
my goal is to get the best deal I possibly can for my seller, not to help you buy this house for the best deal that you possibly can.
Correct.
So when you walk into that situation, you set yourself up to be taken advantage of. And if your fees are going to be paid for anyway, 9 out of 10 times by the seller's agent, go get representation, because representation means, Andy said old car, it means obedience. It means loyalty. It means disclosures about everything that is involved with the property. It means honesty. It means fair dealings. It means financial responsibility and accounting. It means a lot of things that we would do for you as a buyer to help you put yourself in the best situation possible when negotiating with a seller's agent who's trying to do the same thing for that house.
Absolutely. And also removing liability from yourself and putting it on that agent. So the agent is going to be the one handling the legal documents and the contracts.
Yes.
And putting that liability on themselves, and there's a value there too.
Not to mention the resources, right?
For sure. The
knowing
MLS.
good inspection companies.
Yes.
Knowing lots of good agents have been doing this long enough and have been in enough situations where they know a contractor or a roofer or a sewer guy or a plumber or an electrician or somebody that they can bring in to help you as a buyer make a more well-informed decision about probably the biggest purchase you're ever going to make. Right?
Yes, sir.
So there is value in all of that. And again, if those fees are paid for by the seller's agent or the selling brokerage, right? There's no reason not to be represented, in my opinion.
I totally agree. And there are discount brokerages out there that will offer, they'll say, we'll sell your house for 3% or something like that, right? Where they'll only take 0.5% in commission and they'll give 2.5% to the buyer's agent or whatever it is.
Sure.
But if you use them, you feel free. They're out there. You're going to get 0.5%.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to get as much for your house as you want. You're going to have a terrible relationship. That budget, that quote unquote budget brokerage that takes the listing for a discounted rate
is going to give you discounted service.
Yeah, you're just going to get discounted service, and they're going to throw some pictures up on the MLS, and that's all you're going to get.
And there's a time for that, right?
Sure.
Like when you, I'm recently getting bids for a patio. My patio in my house is sloped towards my house, and it's like a water runway into my basement.
Yeah.
So we have to take care of that. We're going to rip it out. We got to put something else there, right? Whether it's a deck or a new patio. So we're getting bids for a patio, right?
Yeah.
Got 3 different bids, right?
Yeah.
There is a time when maybe going with the lowest bid makes sense because you feel comfortable with the relationship and the value that's provided by the person who's providing that bid, right?
That's it. Yep.
But there are some times, like when I went with the cheapest bid for my concrete work out front, and the wall had to be repoured and knocked down 3 different times. The patio had to be repoured twice, and then they left all of the concrete in the yard for like 2.5 months before they got it out of there.
Live and learn, bro.
Yeah.
That's
to me, that's, I would have rather paid the extra
That's a
bit.
good analogy. That's totally true. You would have rather, hindsight being 2020, you would have gotten better.
I would have paid a little bit more, but I would have had 2.5 months of my life back, stressed out, with a yard that had some grass, and my wife not being like, what's going on here?
What are you doing here?
Yeah. Do I need to take this over, Casey?
Well, I mean, I think hopefully that kind of paints a little bit of a picture for people listening. Like, okay, when you ask the question, what's going on with that lawsuit that happened? So you're not making as much money or whatever. The short answer is it is how it always was. But like Casey said, it's more of a dialogue now. It's just as agents, we just kind of have to do a better job showing our value, and we can do that. I mean, Casey and I can do that for sure. Most good agents can do that. The only other substantive thing that came out of that lawsuit was buyer's representation. Every state's different, so this one kind of doesn't affect Minnesota. Because we already had that in place, whereas a buyer, you have to have a buyer's representation agreement with an agent to look at homes privately. Not to go to an open house, but to look at homes privately.
AKA like a showing. If you
want to show
a house,
right,
you either have to sign a buyer representation agreement or a showing agreement.
Right.
And as agents, of course, we would rather have you sign the buyer rep agreement.
Right.
Because now we can show you 10 houses that week instead of having you sign 10 different showing agreement forms for every
10 single houses. Right.
Single house. Right.
Right. So in the state in which the lawsuit was brought, there was no buyer representation law. So that is now nationwide. It was already in place in Minnesota.
We've been ahead of the. I mean, we're ahead of the curve on a lot of things.
Minnesota's a consumer-friendly state versus a lot of other states. So, that's
which is to say, also, I'll throw this out there for any prospective buyers that want to go see stuff. Get to open houses.
Totally.
Right? You don't need representation. You don't need to be working with anybody. It's a great way to shop for representation, right? If you walk into an open house and you have an agent hounding you from the second you get there and following you like, just clinging to you in your business, maybe that's your jam. Maybe that's the guy you want. Most likely, maybe you want someone who's a little more laid back. Maybe you ask about if they have done renovations or if test their knowledge on certain things.
Right.
See what their communication style is. See what their follow-up's like, right? It's a good way to gauge who's going to be best serving your needs as a buyer, right? So it's a good way to see houses and sort of vet potential.
Totally right. It's almost like a therapist relationship where sometimes you have to, it's a relationship and it's a vibe fit as much as it is anything else. So
it's almost like a podcast.
Almost like a podcast, sir.
You can use the podcast to vet whether you like agents or not and whether you like them. And if those agents don't have a podcast, probably not good agents.
Yeah, you don't want to use agents without a podcast out of your mind.
But I think that's informative because I think there's a lot of confusion over what actually happened. And hopefully that brought a little clarity for people.
Joining us this week is Nikki Warner. She is the Director of Communications and Government Affairs at the Good Acre in St. Paul and President of Hennepin and Ramsey County Chapter of Minnesota Farmers Union, and also is the co-chair of the board of Neighborhood Roots, which is a farmers market association. So we just want to say hello and welcome to Nikki, and she's going to tell us kind of a little bit about what she does and take it away.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thanks for having me on as your first guest on.
Yeah.
This must
honored.
be the place.
Yeah,
honored.
This is a monumental occasion.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my work really focuses on expanding market access opportunity for Minnesota farmers. I am a non-farmer member of Minnesota Farmers Union, but I've worked as a farmers market manager. I've been working at the Good Acre Food Hub for 8 years. A lot of my work is around advocating for these critical systems that support farmers and resilience in our food system in the face of a changing climate,
Mm-hmm.
So, our legislators are definitely in the position to decide how well resourced or not our food systems will be. So that's what a lot of my advocacy centers around. But yeah, I'm also just like a farmer's market lover at heart. And so moving to Minneapolis and moving to Minnesota from Washington, D.C. in 2016, it's been really cool to get to, I don't know, learn about the seasonality of this place. There's so many rich, cultural, vibrant, like foodways here from indigenous cultures, Hmong cultures. I mean, Minnesota's home to one of the largest Somali populations in the country. And each of those communities play such a critical role in our
Sure.
food system here. So yeah, that's what I
Coming from DC, were you into like the legislative process before you moved here in terms of like policy making or lobbying or any of that kind of stuff?
No, not at all.
Okay.
DC and Washingtonians, it's really a unique situation. We are essentially a state without representation, right?
Yeah.
There's this movement to make DC the 51st state. So when I was living and working in DC, I'd hear about the Farm Bill, and I'm like, none of that stuff is going to impact this place.
Sure.
You know, and I think I was a little bit, it just seemed like real unreachable. Like in DC, it's like, I'm a north of K Street person, not a south of K Street.
Gotcha. That's the dividing line between like the government people and the normies.
Right.
The normies.
So like coming to Minnesota and like, oh my God, I have like, you know, representation for the first time. I get to have a say in voting for my legislators. We have a state Department of Agriculture. We didn't have that in DC. So, you know, I got to really see how, one, what DC is missing without statehood.
Sure.
But two, just really realize that like, oh, if you think someone's advocating for the things you give a shit about, probably not.
And did you come here specifically for the job that you're in now?
No, I did not. I married a Minnesotan.
Okay. All right.
We met
shout out Brandon
in DC. Shout out to Brandon. He actually grew up like 4 blocks from here.
Okay.
He's a
Northeast Minneapolis guy.
He's a Northeast guy,
All
right across the street from like Elsie's and like Island Park and stuff.
Yeah, right on.
So yeah, so we've come back and we visit his family, and God, I like to tell this story because I still pay less for my mortgage than Brandon and I did for rent at our junior 1-bedroom apartment in DC. It was $2,200 a month.
That's crazy.
And now we have a 3-bed, 3-bath home for less than it costs to rent a junior 1-bedroom apartment in DC in 2016.
Yeah.
So the lesson there is it's perspective.
Yeah.
Right? Like
right.
obviously mortgages and interest rates and home prices are maybe a lot higher than they were in the past few years. And it's not great, but there's other markets around the country that are even worse.
Yeah. And that was the thing.
Worse.
We knew we wanted to start a family, and it's like, you know, our friends that have stayed in the DC area, and that I have to say DC area, like I have maybe one friend that still lives in DC proper. You know, we've got friends that have moved back to their hometowns in like New York, upstate, or, you know, moved back to Chicago and Midwest area. And the ones that have stayed have like gone to Virginia or Maryland. Really. So, you know, it's like easy to get priced out. And my mom was in real estate.
Okay.
So she was a Sotheby's agent for a long time. She's now in like the mental health field. Okay. But
those connect.
But you know,
realtors are fucking crazy.
Yeah, true story.
And so she can give advice to other people on how not to be, of course.
Right.
But yeah, I would go to like, you know, open houses, help her out with, you know, with that kind of stuff. And it would be these, you know, $1 million properties that's just, you know, unattainable.
Yeah, that are 1,900 square feet or whatever.
You know, whenever you're in your like, you know, mid and late 20s looking to make your first home purchase, it's like, well, I don't think it's going to happen here. Yeah. And if it does, we're going to have a real small space.
Yeah, because it's not like you're making 3 times as much money as you would here, whereas the home prices there are 3 times what they are here.
Yeah, she sold a lot of homes to like she sold a home to like someone who was a hockey player for the Washington Capitals. There's a lot of Russian people that were buying top-notch homes.
Sure.
You know, it's just like a lot of like dignitaries and diplomats and stuff. And with the cycle of the legislature, you know, in DC, you know, all these new people coming.
Yeah, people are moving all the time.
New people are moving.
Yeah.
And it's just a really unique market, like because of that alone. You know?
Yeah.
So
when you came here, I was one of the things that I've noticed over the last couple of years, and maybe it's just because I've just started paying attention to this kind of stuff, are like urban farms.
Mhm.
Or so there's one in South Minneapolis, close to your guys' neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
by Minnehaha Elementary School,
Mhm.
where they're just like huge open fields in the city where they're like communal grow spaces
Yeah.
and communal gardens and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And it got me thinking about all the people that do farm. The one thing that I loved about the Good Acre is that it provides access to markets for a lot of these people that wouldn't have the ability to do that. So it allows them to like make a living where they maybe wouldn't have
Mhm.
otherwise been able to do so.
Yeah.
Is that, we don't have to talk about DC too much or whatever, but like from what you remember, does that kind of stuff exist out there? Or is that something that's unique to
Yeah.
what you guys are doing in Minnesota?
There are some really cool urban ag organizations in DC that are trying to like, utilize these like green spaces because food is just like it can be food and like urban farming sites and community gardens can really be like anchors of a community.
Sure.
So before I left DC, I had actually gotten chosen there's a lottery for community garden space in the neighborhood I lived in Columbia Heights. And it was just like, I was on the waiting list for like 4 years. I finally got picked, and then it's when I'm moving. So like I had this underground, like talked with a friend to take over my plot.
Okay.
Because it's like
Jeez.
there's not enough space for the demand for people just to like grow, to have like a patio to grow
Sure.
flowers or grow
Yeah.
basil and herbs and stuff. So yeah, I feel like in Minnesota though there is just a much more vibrant scene because you don't have to go as far to, I don't know, less urban places.
Sure.
When I was at Fresh Farm in DC and being a farmers market manager, part of our role is to do farm visits. We'd have to drive like 2-3 hours to like
Sure.
southern Pennsylvania, like the
Shout out Southern Pennsylvania.
yeah. Oh right, that's right. Where are you from again?
Reading, which is not,
Reading.
so you're probably like the Lancaster, York, Harrisburg farm
Adams County,
Amish community.
Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
But
Yeah, certainly much closer here than having to do that from DC.
But here, at the Good Acre, a lot of the farm visits we do, a lot of the farmers that we partner with, they live in Brooklyn Center. They live in East St. Paul. They rent plots 10 acres or less in like Blaine, Cannon Falls, Northfield. It's like not that far from here.
No,
Yeah.
30 miles.
Exactly.
Whatever. Right. Sometimes even closer.
But even that, the fact that a lot of farmers are renting, there's like a huge land access issue
Sure.
in the agriculture community. And there's a lot of people that, growing food is a real easy entry point for entrepreneurship in this country.
Sure.
So a lot of if you go to any farmers market in the cities, in the Twin Cities, you'll see that reflected in the diversity of the growers who are, bringing the produce to market week
Sure.
after week. So, I think that's kind of one of the things where food intersects with real estate is like farmers markets can really be these like vital hubs in their neighborhood. They can help in, up property values or make neighborhoods more desirable.
Sure.
It's like a really cool amenity.
Yeah.
Even at the Good Acre,
Very cool
I get
amenity.
emails sometimes from people who, like over the winter, that's when we start selling for our CSA. Do you guys know what a CSA program is?
I do.
We do, but
because
you
of
should
you.
Okay.
You should explain it for people.
Yeah, so CSA is like a community supported agriculture program. And it's basically works like a veggie subscription box. So you pay at the beginning of the season for a share of a farmer's harvest. For the Good Acre, that season is like an 18 weeks, June through October. And actually, after this, I'm picking up our last CSA box.
Is that a lot of the market for the Good Acre? Is that where a lot of the farmers' stuff goes to?
So our CSA is about 200 or 550 members this year.
Wow.
That's like $250,000 in purchasing
collectively
from local farmers.
That's great.
Awesome.
And that's only a part of like the market access we provide. So we have the multi-farm CSA because there's we've got over 100 farm partners that grow for wholesale for us. But a lot of that food will also go to our wholesale program. So K through 12 schools and their farm to school programs, they can source from a food hub instead of having to make all these individual farm relationships, which are great, but it can't be the only way to go about this, especially from like an equity standpoint, So, we've got our wholesale program. We do a lot of farm to hunger relief. there's a growing movement in like healthcare to do like medically tailored meal boxes with culturally appropriate foods, and when farmers of color can play a role in growing those foods, that's like a win-win is what I like to
That's
say.
cool.
So yeah, I think but yeah, like people email me through the Good Acres website during CSA sign-up season, and they're like, where are your pickup locations? I'm moving to the area.
Okay.
And they're like seeking out food as an amenity, you know, based on like their decisions on where they want to live.
Sure.
That's
Sure.
awesome. Yeah. Let me ask you this: how much of an uphill battle is it legislatively? Because I know you do. You spend some time at the Capitol and with lawmakers, and you know it's obviously vitally important in your opinion, but all three of our opinions. But maybe not so much with some lawmakers. Is it like a convincing job? Is it selling just kind of the importance of it, or how does that work? And what kind of a factor does that play in your job?
Oh my goodness! You know, in Minnesota, in the legislative committees in our state legislature, so we've got the House and the Senate. We're really lucky. First of all, we've got a DFL trifecta in government in this state right now. So the governor is a Democrat, the leaders of the House and the Senate are Democrats. So majority kind of has helped fuel a lot of more like progressive policies. But it's like all about the money. We did, one of my partners at the Minnesota Farmers Market Association did an analysis of last year's ag budget. And 8% of the total ag budget went to food systems projects. The other like 92% went towards like corn and biofuels and ethanol plants and gas stations and, you know, big, what we think of as big ag.
Yeah.
And so, you know.
And that's probably way better than other states. The other states are probably like 98 too.
Oh, don't even get me started on Iowa, Wisconsin, some of their food policies, some of the policies that allow CAFOs, these like concentrated, you know, animal feedlot operations to like get bigger, poison water.
So do you find that having, and without getting political for people, but do you find that having either just like unified government where things can get done regardless of whatever party is in control helps, or does it fall along party lines? Because it sort of feels like agriculture should be pretty
universal,
partisan.
Universal.
You would think so.
Yeah,
you would think so. But I mean, I think the fact is, like, even with the DFL trifecta, there's still a lot of struggles. You know, it's like a lot of what I do and the partners that I work with in this food space do is to let farmers know, or legislators know, to think of a farmer as different than, you know, an old white guy in an air-conditioned tractor cab, you know, mowing rows of corn.
Sure.
Right.
You know, it is. It's like, you know, Yimua, who lives in Maplewood and farms in, you know, North Branch or something. Like, that's more of the real picture and the kinds of farmers that we need to support, especially post-pandemic when we've seen how a breakdown in supply chains can really influence like what's available in our stores.
Did that drive interest in your organization? Did the pandemic?
Yeah. We had the biggest CSA sign-up year ever in 2020, you know, because people are just like, where the hell am I going to get my food? You know?
Sorry, because I'm like genuinely curious about this stuff. Like, where does the funding come from for you guys? Is it a mix of, are there some government subsidies? Is it privately funded? Is it you guys fundraising all the time?
Right.
Grants.
Yeah. We're mostly grant funded.
Okay.
We were also, the Good Acre was seed funded by the Polad Family Foundation.
Okay.
Who really were, you know, focused on like, oh, why is it that farmers are like growing something that's essential for our livelihoods, yet not like generating economic, you know, wealth, or multi-generational wealth. And so a huge part of that missing piece for like why farmers aren't making it work, you know, financially is like because the system's not set up for farmers of that scale. There's this like missing middle supply chain. And that's what a food hub offers. I mean, a food hub technically, like, we're a warehouse. We're an aggregation place for smaller farmers so that we can meet the demands of larger wholesale buyers. And so, you know, whenever we don't have services like that or facilities like the Good Acre, farmers just sell at the markets. And if it's a rainy day or a windy day and people don't show up,
Like that's it.
it's a wash,
Yeah.
And so I think food hubs and these kind of like middle supply chain and like aggregator type organizations, and the Good Acre is a nonprofit, there's a lot of, Russ Davis or Cisco could technically be
Sure.
an aggregator, but we're talking about local food economy here.
Right.
It's like, it helps diversify their
Sure.
income streams,
One thing I noticed just from kind of checking out the website, and you guys do a lot of donation. I think it was something like 200,000 pounds of food donated.
That's been a lot of what my advocacy has centered around, is just making sure that state dollars can fund purchases for local foods for food banks and food shelves.
Okay.
Like produce is one of the most in-demand food items at a food shelf, and the state has a lot of like local food purchasing dollars out there. It's just like, how do we direct that towards food that's from here for here?
Sure.
So I got $600,000 for the Good Acres Leaf program, which is a program that it's like a small farm business accelerator program. It's like, hey, we're going to give you, farmer in the program, a guarantee $5,000, $7,500, depending on if they're tier 1, tier 2, kind of assess like what their goals are to grow their farm business. And then it's like, bring us what you have. Let's start practicing growing for wholesale. This is like what size wax box it needs to come in. Here's the
So you got them 600K?
I got them 600K. That's how I met
Get
Tim
it, Nikki.
Walls at the Ag Omnibus bill signing at Medicine Creek Farm.
Awesome.
And I was like, Walls, don't forget what the F in DFL stands for. So maybe he'll tap me to join the administration.
Yeah, right. Well, at the very least,
admin.
At the very least, your homie Peggy Flanagan will be the new governor.
Right.
And then you have a pipeline.
That's right. And actually, I did hang out with Peggy Flanagan. She's a big food fan too. She grew up in St. Louis Park, and I asked her if she wanted to go have school lunch with me on a farm to school Thursday at St. Louis Park. So we went there earlier this year. That's another cool thing that people should consider when they're picking what neighborhoods they want to live in. Like, does your school have good food?
For sure.
Like, we're so lucky in Minnesota. We've got free school meals now.
Yep.
That's a big deal.
We were looking at, this is, I'm not going to say the high school. We were looking at high schools, and my son was touring it. He's a freshman this year. And I picked him up from his like tour day. And I was like, how was it, man? Like, tell me all about it. And he goes, not going to lie, Dad. It was pretty tasty. And I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, lunch was amazing, man. They had a waffle bar. They had like this, that, and the other. And I was like, so the whole day, your takeaway is that lunch was tasty and you want to go to the school because the lunch is good. He's like, yeah, it's way better than where I'm at now. So
totally. And we, I've been to schools where they've got like hand harvested native wild rice soup on the line. They've got like local potatoes and a baked potato bar, I mean.
There was just a program on NPR this week about ricing.
Yeah,
about natives sort of getting back into that and returning to that culture of like the old ways of doing it.
And so some of the advocacy I do is like making sure that farm to school programs, Minnesota has a really great one. It's called like the Agri Farm to School Grant. And schools who apply get reimbursed for their local food purchases. One of the items that they could buy through the Good Acre is a 50-pound bag of like native harvested wild rice from the Red Lake Nation. And it's like, you can, get, the schools have an incentive to buy better quality ingredients through these programs, but these programs only exist if we advocate for continued funding for them. We could
How can people do that?
We could easily double, triple, quadruple the funding for farm to school purchases because schools want to buy better ingredients. The National School Lunch Program, is a funny formula, but like at the end of the day, nutrition directors have like $1 per kid in food purchases once they pay for, overhead. And actually, our 5th Congressional District Representative Ilhan Omar was the lead author of the a federal free school meals bill. So we'll see what happens.
So how, being in the middle of it, how can your average person, listening or just out there advocate for some of this stuff?
Right. Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like one of the best things you can do is just buy local.
Gotcha.
Go to the farmers market, support your local farmers.
Use your dollars.
In person. Exactly. You could shop at the co-op. There's a lot of cool ways to buy local food in Minnesota. I mean, from farmers markets to CSAs. I mean, check out the Minnesota Grown Directory, but also look up who your representatives are and see what committees they're on. Big
Sure.
shout out to Rep. Sam Sensor-Mura. She represents the Longfellow neighborhood.
Okay.
She's up for re-election in the House right now, and she's been a really progressive member of the House Ad Committee. Shout out District 63A.
That's great.
We're 63B. Do you know who you're? We know.
Emma Greenman.
Yeah, Emma Greenman. That's right. So know who your representatives are. Emma Greenman, our rep, has done a lot of really cool work with Minnesota Farmers Union around antitrust issues.
Yeah, and
Because
she's up for re-election too.
Yeah,
Do you face pushback from corporate entities, corporate farms, corporate?
Yeah, yes and no, because they're so big.
That they're just like, whatever.
Yeah, I think the real interesting
Feed
thing
your people.
is in philanthropy, though. Organizations like the Margaret A. Cargill Foundation or
Those rich ass pole ads.
Yeah, Orlando Lake. Like they are some of the key philanthropic investors into some of the solutions for building these regional food systems.
For sure.
It's a real interesting mix, and it's like we've got like the General Mills. We've got a lot of big food businesses here in the Twin Cities, and so I think that we're in a really interesting time and place in the Midwest, especially with like regenerative agriculture, perennial crops. There's a lot of cool stuff happening like right here. So if I wouldn't want to live anywhere else, I'll tell you that.
Most important question I've asked yet. Can you get bacon through the CSA?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm in. Good.
Yes, you can.
Okay. Perfect. Sold.
It's not all cauliflower and eggplant.
Done.
I had to, I was tabling for the Good Acre at the Twin Cities Veg Fest, and I couldn't bring my sign because it has bacon on it. Because, we got good local bacon. Sunshine Harvest Farm. Good bacon. Yeah.
We were gonna split a cow, weren't we? Not from that farm, but from a different farm. We got to talk about that.
It's December. Now that
it's December.
Yeah, the cow will be ready in December. I'll show you pictures on Instagram of the cow we're gonna get.
Oh, I love it.
That's good. You can make friends with it before you
That
eat
is
it.
hyper local right there.
As a foodie, if you meet any people like me, if you get to help find real estate where it's like a good kitchen, room for a deep freeze, a garage fridge is ideal.
Yeah.
Whenever you start giving a shit about where you're sourcing your food from.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like, advocates like yourself and similarly minded advocates are hopefully keeping the trajectory of what you do, and local farmers kind of on the forefront. Hopefully that 92-8 split, hopefully that 8 keeps growing and just keep doing the work you're doing. We're really happy to have you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
This food stuff is part of what makes Minnesota like the best state in the nation for families and kids. You know? So
I agree.
I'll keep on keeping on.
From 2 East Coasters moving here.
That's right.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go back to PA, would you?
I wouldn't. We had discussed, my wife and I had discussed very early on moving to Philadelphia just to be closer to family but the community that we built here, the public school system in St. Paul, we were super happy with.
Charming, charismatic friends you've met along the way.
Friends.
I mean, honestly,
may host a podcast
left my
with you.
family back east, and then I got a neighbor like Andy and Sarah.
That's right.
Now who needs family?
Watch my kids for me.
Yep.
Andy and Sarah, they met my son before Ruby even.
Yeah, we were
I came home from the hospital with
we were
my
outside.
Newborn baby.
Yeah.
And there they were just hanging in the backyard.
Just threw your baby like
Here
a football
you go,
to
take my
Andy.
baby.
Yep.
Passed it over the fence.
Yep.
Sweet.
Well, thanks so much again, Nikki. We really appreciate everything you do, and thanks for taking time out of your day with us.
Yeah.
You bet.
Did you want to stick around for
boom times?
I can share a little boom time.
Okay.
All right.
That's good.
We'll do that next.
If only 3 people in the world know what boom times is, that's a start.
Boom doesn't have to stand for anything. It's just
as I learned last
there's
week.
No vowels.
Yeah.
It's BMTMS.
We could make
boom times.
We could
boom
make
times.
the vowels happen. Just throwing it out there.
Well,
I'm sure we
it's a
can
workshop.
find. Yes.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
organic operators. Just kidding.
Might be-
Well, we won't spend too much time on the
Okay,
O's then, because
sorry.
it's not my area of expertise, but
Right.
they exist.
Your show, not mine.
All right. Thanks again.
Welcome to Boom Times, a segment called Boom Times, Boom Times.
All right. What are we doing now?
Boom times.
All right, Boom. Why are you pointing at me?
Because
Boom
you're
times.
the boom guy.
It was my idea.
It was your, and plus I know you have some stuff ready to go.
Um,
I will say that I'm going to cut you off before you even start
please.
because it's not on your list, but we have to talk about the Lynx game that
We
will happen tonight.
do.
Okay.
Well, and we have to talk about Lynx Liberty Game 1.
Yeah. I mean, the whole series, right, leading up to now. Have you been watching the WNBA at all? Do you know?
I haven't.
Oh,
I
I
know.
bet you there are a lot of
I'm more of
farmers
a
in the
B and a
WNBA.
T. Yeah.
We had, you missed an amazing Game 1, Nikki.
Did you hear about
I
the game?
did,
at all?
I did.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So you're up to
I'm not
speed.
like under a rock
Okay.
completely, but yeah.
Yeah, game 1 was insanity.
Courtney Williams hitting a 4-point play with 5 seconds to go, down 3, or hitting a 3, getting fouled, down 3, tying the game, hitting the free throw. It was insanity. Yeah, it was great.
Epic.
Missing the 3, getting the rebound,
Right.
getting the pass
kicked
back
out.
to hit the 3,
Right.
foul, and then Stewie choking. I
Choking.
don't want to say it, but she choked.
She choked.
Choked.
It's fine. She's one of the best players ever.
Who missed
It
the
happens.
free throw to send it to overtime, where we just dominated. The Lynx dominated
Yes.
overtime.
Yes.
Domination. It was.
I just loved the looks on Spike Lee
All the celebrities.
and
There's a-
Jason Sudeikis just crushed,
Yeah.
and I loved it.
There's a painting. I'm not painting. Jeez. There's a picture going around of the shot, right? So she's like this in the air. She's being fouled. She's falling backwards, and then there's a picture of the entire Madison Square Garden behind and faces. And someone was like, "This is a Renaissance painting." And then they had
Oh my God.
close-ups of all the pictures, and it truly looked like a Renaissance painting that you would see in a museum. All the different expressions of like fear, anxiety, like disbelief.
Oh my
It was
God.
crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Game 2 was a little
Epic.
more of a letdown.
Yeah, for sure. But they stole one. That's all they need.
They did. And Game 3 is tonight. We're recording on Wednesday. They're showing the game for free at the Riverview Movie Theater. Shout out
Speaking of,
Riverview.
That's the most Southside place ever.
Yeah.
So I have never taken my kids to a movie there.
You haven't?
Well,
Wow.
let me say, because we have the Highland Theater right in St. Paul, and then
It's not the same.
and then the Grand Theater
Yeah.
right having been there in about 15 years. To me, it's the same.
Yeah, you group them together.
We
sure.
rolled into that, and my kids were like, "What world have I
Yes.
walked into?" From the people behind the counter
Yeah.
and the most Southside 18-year-old ever,
Yep.
like
Totally.
slanging popcorn.
And a family
Southside
of-
prices.
Yeah,
Family of 4
yeah.
can see a movie and all get fed
It-
for like $29.
It was pretty dope.
Yeah,
It was
it's great.
pretty
It's
dope.
legit.
But they're showing the Lynx game tonight at 7, so I'm gonna stop by. I'm gonna have to leave early to pick up my son from work, but I'm gonna check it out, and
Wait,
super
are
exciting.
You, picking him up from work early to leave to go see the
No,
game?
I'm gonna go to the game by myself, and then when he texts me that he's ready to get
okay,
picked up,
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
pick him up from work. But I'm really
You're going to the game?
no, I'm going to
To
the Riverview
Riverview.
to watch
Oh,
the game
all
for
right.
free. Anybody is welcome to join me.
I might go there. They're gonna have popcorn.
Oh,
they
yeah.
have real good popcorn.
They
This
got
might be
great
a thing.
popcorn.
Yeah.
This might be a
Um,
thing.
I know,
I
so
might
we'll
see you
go.
there.
We'll go.
It's fun.
And yeah, we'll see how the rest of the series goes. But props to the Lynx. This
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
been a great
Yeah.
season and a great final.
Only
so far.
dynasty in Minnesota in the last 50 years.
for now.
I'm
So
just saying,
Anthony
like
Edwards
historically,
is,
right? Like
he's creeping.
5 of 7
Oh,
finals
yeah.
appearances.
Yeah, there's nothing ever in this in the Twin Cities.
They
like that.
deserve
Well, he's
they
got it.
they deserve a lot more respect and admiration and accolades and acknowledgement than they get, and hopefully it's coming
Word.
as we move forward.
Totally agree.
Shout out any Lynx players who want to come on the pod. Just saying.
Yep.
Big fans.
Yep.
All right.
Bridget Carlton, Courtney Williams for sure.
Boom times.
Boom times. Nikki is our honorary guest
All right.
doing an honorary Boom Times. She's brought some.
Do you have one? You have some ideas?
Yeah, I can share some. I got some good books that I've been reading.
Love
I
it.
just picked up Homestyle Cookery by Maddie Matheson.
Oh, the dude from The Bear.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that guy.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of like an aspirational cookbook. Sometimes I go like add a bunch of cookbooks on my library holds list. And
Nikki and I are low-key
foodies,
cookbook
cookbook
nerds.
fans. Really good fancy recipes. I don't know if I'll make one because it's like, you know, a bunch of ingredients, but that is a good cookbook.
Your saffron budget is...
Are there
If
pictures?
you want to leaf through my Gruyere budget would be astronomical with this guy, but like
just
I'm
use
sure
Swiss.
It would. Oh, I'm sure it would taste really good. Also, one of the cool things about the Good Acre CSA is we have a book add-on, so you can get a new book about the food system every month.
Okay.
And I got Barron's Money, Power, and Corruption of America's Food Industry by Austin Frerick, and that was a really freaking good book.
Okay.
And like digestible, you know, about like,
Sure.
oh, this is like what's going on. This is why things are the way they are.
Sure.
And I'm reading Never Whistle at Night, an indigenous like dark fiction anthology.
You're reading more than one book at one time.
Yeah, I'm a like
That's
little
new-
here, little
new to me.
there.
That is impressive.
Yeah, that one's a good one. But Ruby asked me the other night. She's like, "I heard you whistle." It was already dark.
Because she knows you're reading the book.
Yeah. So,
That's great.
yeah, it was a good one. And then on TV, I just finished watching Hacks. That was such a good show.
Dude, I am all
On
caught
Hacks?
up on Hacks.
So good.
Every episode, all
Gene
seasons.
Smart, Hannah
Hacks is
Einbinder.
great.
That was a good show.
Hannah Einbinder is
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
And
then
Gene Smart's obviously a legend.
And Jean
She's
also
great.
just recently hosted on SNL. I've been
She
watching the
did.
50th season. If I can stay up late enough. You
Yep.
know, old people problems.
Yep.
But like Maya Rudolph as
Kamala is great.
Jim Gaffigan as well. It's like pure gold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
spot on.
Yeah. How about you?
Okay, I've got two. I had four last week. I'm trimming the fat. So my boob times this week are anniversaries. So it is this week was the 30th anniversary of Pulp Fiction,
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
which makes me feel not young, but that's okay. So a couple things about Pulp Fiction and Quentin Tarantino, because I'm a big Quentin Tarantino fan. And first, a hilarious story about that movie. I was born in 1979. A little old, sorry. And that movie came out in 1994, which was 30 years ago. In 1995, I was 16. You had to be 17 to see the movie, right? So I went to one of those like cheap theaters with a bunch of my friends who were all
Was
of
it
age.
the Riverview?
No. It was not. It was a cheaper. It was like a suburban cheap theater. And they were checking. We got word that they were like checking IDs.
They did check IDs
and
at Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
God.
I was not expecting that. All my friends were of age, and I said, one for Pulp Fiction, please. And they asked for my ID, and I was like, I don't have a driver's license. And they said, okay, what's your birthday and what year were you born? And I fucking panicked.
You didn't just casually drop
So
your
I should
year
have
by
said
one?
my birthday in 1978, which
Yeah.
would have made me old enough, but I panicked and said 1980.
You went the other way.
I went the other way, and I said, so I had to say, one for the Brady Bunch movie, please.
Oh, man. Did you sneak
And then
in?
I went to the Brady Bunch movie,
Oh, God.
and then, no, and then I snuck into Pulp Fiction, but I missed the whole first opening diner scene, and then my friends made fun of me for
That's
6 months
ridiculous.
straight, as
Your
they should
nickname
have.
from now on is going to be Brady Bunch.
Brady Bunch movie.
All right, let's.
At least you got to see the opening.
I don't want
credit.
that. I don't want that to
I-
be sticky.
Piggyback, I saw that movie in Naperville, Illinois.
Illinois.
So my buddy moved out to Naperville, and I was out visiting him, and saw it in Naperville. And I remember that they checked IDs because I was 16. And it's the first time they had ever checked anything in any movie ever.
Yeah.
I used to work at my first job was at a movie theater. I was in the
Really?
box office. Never carded like
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I mean, it was always like a thing. Like,
Was it
where you say you're
17?
13.
No, it was
it was-
R, but it was like a hard R. I mean,
Yeah.
there was
17?
There was a lot
Oh,
going
I thought-
on.
no R's 17.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Dang.
Anyway, so that's one of my favorite movies ever, and TheRinger.com put out a list of the 85 greatest Quentin Tarantino
We're not going to go through
characters.
them.
We're definitely not.
Okay,
But do you want to know what the top 3 are?
How about what your top 3 are?
Yeah.
And do they align with The Ringer? Because The Ringer's list of 100 best basketball players is trash.
I agree with that. It's trash. Anthony Edwards is like 11.
That's
Don't
pretty-
even get me
pretty
started.
legit.
Get out of here. So number 3, they have Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards. Christoph Waltz.
that's good.
pretty good.
He was
He
good.
plays about the best
Yeah.
horrible evil person.
Yeah.
Number 2 is the Bride from Kill Bill, Uma Thurman.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
she's great.
Pretty great.
Yeah.
And number 1 is
gotta be,
Jules Winfield
Yeah.
from Pulp Fiction. Anyway, so that's my one of my 2 boom times. Casey?
I went as a family with my family to the Minnesota Zoo for their, I don't know what they call it. I'm calling it the Pumpkin Trail. I don't know what's officially called.
Yeah, is it like, something like that.
Yeah, it was amazing.
That's
it was
awesome.
like 2 miles of walking through the woods with tens of thousands of lit up jack-o'-lanterns and LED lighting and uplit trees and amazing painted pumpkins, like hundreds of them. And it was like visually it was incredible.
And your kids even liked it?
The
Even though they're
Jack-
kind of older?
Jack-o'-lantern Spectacular.
Yeah, thank you. The
Pumpkin
jack-o'-lantern
Trail.
spectacular.
Whatever.
There is a pumpkin trail. Like
sucker for good
there
lighting.
is the pumpkin trail.
I see.
But so we went, and my kids were not enthusiastic. My son's 15 and my daughter's 12.
Yeah.
And not very happy. I was not enthusiastic. I was like, really?
We're driving down to Apple
It was the
Valley.
cold. It was
Ugh.
Sunday night.
Oh,
It was
the cold, windy
cold.
one.
It was. I
Yeah.
was like, why? What are we doing? You know.
And then you.
We
didn't
got
forget.
in there, and I was like, this is great. And my son hated every second of it, but it became like a really pleasurable family experience. Talking trash to my son as we went through the whole place and just like enraging him little by little, more and more and more as we kept going through. My
Love
daughter
that.
had a blast.
Yeah. Railing on her brother.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna put up
times.
pictures in the video as we go because I got some really good pictures.
She's how
But
old?
She's 12.
12. Okay.
But it's cool, and it's cool for families. It's cool. We saw a lot of like date night things happening there. Lots of little kids, lots of older people without families. Like it just seemed to like be generationally everywhere. And it goes until November 1st or 2nd, something like that. And they
time.
do it every year.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about it until this year. It's like the 6th
Halloween
year.
is like the shit here in Minnesota.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, really.
Pumpkin
is.
patch, pumpkin trail,
That's a
jack-o'-lantern spectacular.
You know what we should do for next week? I'm going to preview next week. We should find out where the best Halloween blocks are in the cities
Ooh.
for trick-or-treaters, because they're definitely
Yeah.
somewhere.
Genius.
Yeah.
That's a great,
Totally.
really good idea.
Okay.
There's some really good skeletons in our neighborhood.
Are you
Oh,
going to be an
yeah.
official consultant for this show at this point? Just email in the ideas when they come to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, she's on the payroll.
Yeah. If you do want to get in touch with us with ideas, this must be the place, pod@gmail.com.
Yes, sir.
And we do have a phone number.
We do have a phone number.
The phone number is 612-234-1889. 612-234-1889.
Or this must be the place pod@gmail.com.
Yep. Leave us feedback or voice messages that you want to be heard on the podcast, or ideas for future episodes, or whatever you want to tell us. Yell at us, whatever. We're used to it, right?
We're used to it, man.
Okay. Trial by fire.
Trial by fire. Solid boom times.
That's right.
That's all I got.
Sometimes. Thanks, guys.
Thanks
Yeah,
again,
thanks
Nikki, for sticking
thanks
around
for
for boom
having-
times.
yeah.
Yeah, you bet.
And as always, ask yourself this question going forward. If and when you come to the point where you are looking to buy and or sell a house, do you want to use a realtor that has a podcast or one without a podcast? Thank you.
Yeah. It's a pretty easy answer.
Pretty easy answer.
I know what my answer is.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nikki.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
And now, This Must Be the Place presents Neighborhood Watch.
Neighborhood Watch.
Neighborhood Watch.
Neighborhood Watch.
Neighborhood Watch.
It is not.
It's a double entendre.
It is not like you find on
Is it
a
a double
Facebook
entendre?
group, or
No.
it is not about the 13-year-olds leaving trash in the alley behind your house. This Neighborhood Watch is about all the great things that occur in all of the neighborhoods around the Twin Cities.
Not only in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Each week we're going to talk about a different neighborhood.
Yep.
We're going to do a lot of Minneapolis neighborhoods, a lot of St. Paul neighborhoods, but we're going to get outside of that zone as well. So this first week we're going to talk about the Minnehaha neighborhood.
Minnehaha. Where is
Minnehaha.
Minnehaha
Oh,
located?
Casey, interesting you should ask. I actually live in I do.
Minnehaha?
I do. Yep.
Tell us more.
I will. So Minnehaha is a neighborhood that stretches south from 54th Street, north to Minnehaha Parkway, west from 34th Street, east to the river.
That's a lot of directions.
I know.
Are we saying it's South Minneapolis?
It's southeast Minneapolis.
Okay.
Yep. So
All right.
it's going to be between Lake Nokomis and Minnehaha Falls.
Okay, perfect.
And sometimes it's called Nokomis East.
Okay.
Some people call it the Nokomis neighborhood. Those are great if that helps you, but those technically it's called the Minnehaha neighborhood. Okay. So as our first neighborhood watch segment, I wanted to talk about Minnehaha, not only to shout it out because I live there, but mainly because of what real estate is doing around obviously both cities and the Twin Cities Metro, but in Minneapolis, a lot of the desirability is in west of there. So kind of west of 35W. Lakes, Linden Hills, Lyndhurst, places like that obviously are very desirable because you've got Lake Harriet right there.
Yep.
You're close to Edina. You've got Lake Bede-Makaska. You've got Uptown close by. You've got cool restaurants, stuff like that. However, first-time home buyers, they're not buying. Some are, of course, but they're not buying homes.
Not most first-time buyers.
No,
can afford
because
Linden Hills.
Correct.
Or really anything around.
Do you want to fancy a guess as to what the median home price in Linden Hills
is? This for me?
Yeah,
median?
Sure. Linden Hills and Lyndhurst is as of right now. The median home price.
Not the average.
Not the average.
The median, $632,494.14.
That's spot on. You're exact to the cent. No, it is $645,000.
Wow, I was pretty close.
You were real close.
That was good. I must know what I'm doing.
You must know what you're doing. Yeah. The median home price in Lyndhurst, which is one neighborhood away, is $658,000.
Crazy.
Now, the median home price in my neighborhood.
Can I guess?
Go for it.
$402,012.14.
$325,000.
Oh my goodness!
I know. So there's a lot of smaller homes in my neighborhood. So that's that kind of, there's some 1,000 square foot homes and stuff like that. But the Minnehaha neighborhood is just as close to a lake as many parts of Linden Hills and Lyndhurst. You're right by Lake Nokomis.
Yep. Closer to St. Paul, if you dig St. Paul.
If you dig St. Paul, which Casey does, you are right across the river from St. Paul.
Yep.
You're closer to Minnehaha Falls Regional Park, which is, for my money, it's my happy place, my family's happy place. It's
great green space.
Great green space.
Easy to get anywhere in the South Metro without having to hop on a highway. If you just drive Minnehaha Parkway.
Yes, sir. And we have the Grand Rounds, which you can pretty much hop on at any point in the Minnehaha neighborhood, and you can circumnavigate all around the lakes, Minnehaha Falls, down Minnehaha Parkway. And you can get a great starter home, a move up home even. Yeah. And there's a lot of interesting, disparate architecture and, great local businesses.
It's a neighborhood feel. Like it feels like a community, right?
For
like people who live there
100%.
Love living there. And as evidenced by our conversation with Nikki today, right?
Yeah.
Like neighbors become tight. Like
that's right.
Which doesn't happen in every neighborhood.
No, it doesn't. And you get less air traffic noise
Yeah.
in Minnehaha than you do
Yeah.
in Linden Hills.
Yeah.
So if that's something that's important to you as well, like,
Yes.
you're close. Yes. Geographically,
that
we're
out.
close to the airport. Yes. But the flight patterns
Yeah.
are not there. So also there's great small businesses. I just wanted to shout out a couple.
These are what makes neighborhoods to me, by the way.
What's
the,
that?
The restaurants, the small businesses, all the little
Yes.
corner sort of commercial retail areas.
Yeah.
And there's some cool ones in Minnehaha.
Ran into Roger and Nancy at Oxendale's.
Yeah. Right?
Sure.
That was very Minnesotan.
I know. So there's a shop called Watt, W-A-T-T, owned by this dude Bill, who lives in Casey's neighborhood in St. Paul. But it's an e-bike shop, little shop. My wife and I bought e-bikes from him. He's the only one that works there. I think he might have another employee, but you know, he was telling me his story about how he opened it a couple years ago and kind of trials and tribulations extreme he went through at the first year.
Sure.
Kind of similar to real estate, you know.
Yeah.
It's once you get
Opening a
off and
business
running,
is tough.
it's tough, man. Yeah.
Support local businesses.
Totally support local businesses.
You need it an e-bike whether you live in Minnehaha or not. Go
right.
to Watt. Check it out.
Go to Watt. Check it out. He's great and helpful and answers any of your questions you have. He also sends out periodic emails to everybody that's bought a bike from him that says, "Okay, winter's coming. This is what you're going to want to do with your battery.
Yeah.
This is how often you're going to want to charge it. You're going to want to keep it charged to 70% 3 times throughout the winter. This is where you're going to want to, you know, that
so it
kind
helps
of
you
stuff.
protect your investment a little bit.
Yeah.
I get it.
We also have Asa's Bagels and Bialys. Shout out Asa. He and his team are open Thursday through Sunday mornings. So when they're there, they're all there. Some of the best bagels in bagel,
not bagel.
It's in between bagel and bagel.
It really is a bagel. You beg.
It's a.
I have a question. If
bagel.
if you're hungry and you need some food, do you bag for the food or do you beg for the food?
It's not a bagel, bro. What are we talking about here? Anyway, great local business in Minnehaha. I highly recommend. My family, I go almost at least twice a month.
What's your favorite thing to get there?
Salt bagel and
salt. You're a salt guy.
Yeah. But it's different there.
Okay.
It's like the salt is like baked into the bagel. It's not like
crusted on top.
No, it's not crusted on top.
Like a sandpaper sponge.
And dill scallion cream cheese.
Oh.
I get a half dozen salt bagels, warm, freshly made.
Do they make sandwiches there? Like
they do make
everything,
sandwiches.
Egg, bacon, cheese with some sriracha.
No, it's more like traditional Jewish deli style. I feel like it's like a lot of lox.
This is
capers.
So I just thought the only place for that would be Cecil's in St. Paul.
Cecil's
this
great.
is good
we'll talk about
for
Cecil's
another
week.
Another option.
Yeah. It's way different than Cecil's.
Okay, good. I want way different.
Yeah.
That's
anyway, shout out Minnehaha. It's a place I love, and it's a great neighborhood in the city. And we will talk about another neighborhood at next week's Neighborhood Watch.
We will. That's been Neighborhood Watch. Aces? What was it called?
Aces. ASA apostrophe S.
ASA apostrophe S.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. We thank you guys for tuning in this week to This Must Be the Place, the only Twin Cities real estate podcast.
And real estate adjacent.
Where you're going to talk about great local shops like Aces and
Watt.
You're going to hear neighborhood stuff. You're going to talk sports, and you're going to get some really digestible, good, funny, informative content from guests and from Andrew and myself regarding the Twin Cities real estate market. So hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we will catch you next week, right?
Yep. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, anything, this must be the place pod@gmail.com.
Yep.
Or feel free to call us and leave us a voicemail. And that number
612-234-1889.
All right. Thanks again, Casey. We'll see y'all next week.
We are realtors. So if you're looking for a house, or if you have a house and you like us, Let us
Use a
help you.
realtor that has a podcast. Come on.
Yeah, seriously.
All right.
All right.
See you next time.
Bye.